Your favorite bottle costs $80. You spray it in the morning, you smell incredible walking out the door, and by the time you sit down to lunch, it's gone. Not faded, gone. Like you never put anything on at all. Meanwhile, there's a woman in the produce aisle at Walmart who walked past you and you could still smell her trail 3 minutes later. She didn't spend $80, she didn't spend $40. She spent about $2. And the wildest part of this whole story is that the trick she's using was sitting on the counter at every department store in America for decades. And the people behind the glass cases were quietly hoping you'd never figure it out. Because the second you do, you stop coming back every 6 weeks to replace a bottle that evaporates by noon. Let me explain what's actually happening on your skin, because once you understand this, you can never ununderstand it, and you'll start to see the entire fragrance counter differently. Perfume is a mix of alcohol, aromatic compounds, and a tiny bit of fixative. When you spray it on dry skin, especially skin that's been freshly showered and stripped of its natural oils, the alcohol flashes off in seconds, and the aromatic molecules have nothing to cling to. They lift off your skin and into the air, which is great for the first 10 minutes and catastrophic for the next 10 hours. Perfumers have known this since the 1920s. Department store sales associates have known it since they started working the counter. And the $2 fix is something almost every grandmother in this country used to do without even thinking about it, until the marketing machine convinced everyone that the answer was just to buy a bigger bottle. The trick is petroleum jelly. Plain, unscented, the little blue tub that costs about $2 at any drugstore in the country. You put a thin layer on your pulse points first, your wrists, the side of your neck, behind your ears, the inside of your elbows, and then you spray your fragrance directly over it. That's it. That's the whole secret. The petroleum jelly creates an occlusive barrier that traps the aromatic molecules against your skin and slows their evaporation dramatically. Fragrance enthusiasts on Reddit's r/fragrance and r/designer fragrances have been testing this for years. The consistent report is that a scent that normally dies in 2 to 3 hours stretches into 6, 8, sometimes 10 hours of real wear. Fragrantica's longevity votes back this up too. The same bottle, applied the same way, performs in a completely different league when there's a barrier underneath it. And the department stores absolutely knew. They just had zero financial incentive to tell you, because the faster your perfume disappears, the faster you walk back through those sliding doors with your credit card. Now, before we go further, I want you to do something. If you've ever stood in front of your bathroom mirror at noon, sniffed your own wrist, felt that little stab of betrayal because the $80 bottle you bought last month has already given up on you, hit that subscribe button right now, because the next few things I'm about to tell you are the ones the counter staff really don't want floating around. And while you're at it, drop a comment with the perfume that's burned you the worst. The one that smelled like heaven in the store and like nothing on your skin by lunchtime. I want to see how many of you have been quietly scammed by the same bottles. I guarantee the same 3 or 4 names are going to come up over and over. Okay, back to it. The reason petroleum jelly works so well isn't magic. It's chemistry. It's also the reason a bunch of other cheap tricks from the drugstore aisle outperform anything the sales associate is going to push on you. Aromatic molecules need something to hold on to. Oil holds them. Water doesn't. Dry skin doesn't. This is why people with naturally oily skin always seem to get more hours out of the same bottle than people with dry skin. And it's why winter, when everyone's skin is parched, is when perfumes seem to vanish the fastest. The fix isn't a stronger fragrance. The fix is giving the fragrance somewhere to live. And here's where the department store lie gets really interesting. The industry has spent the last 40 years convincing you that the answer to weak longevity is to trade up. Eau de Toilette not lasting? Move to Eau de Parfum. Eau de Parfum not lasting? Move to Parfum, the most concentrated and most expensive tier. And yes, there's a real difference. Eau de Toilette is generally around 5% to 15% aromatic concentration. Eau de Parfum runs around 15% to 20%. Parfum, sometimes called extrait, can be 20% to 40%. That's a verifiable fact, straight from the brand's own technical sheets. But here's what they don't put on the box. Concentration alone doesn't guarantee longevity. The base notes, the fixatives, and your skin's ability to hold them matter just as much. A well-formulated Eau de Toilette on prepped skin will outlast a poorly applied parfum on bone-dry skin every single time. The industry just doesn't want you running that experiment because the markup on the parfum bottle is enormous. And speaking of things the industry doesn't want you running, let's talk about the reformulation problem, because this is the one that breaks people's hearts the most. If you've ever sprayed a classic you remember from the 1970s or 1980s and thought, this doesn't smell like it used to, you weren't imagining it. You were right. The International Fragrance Association, the IFRA, has spent the last few decades progressively restricting ingredients that were once the backbone of legendary fragrances. Oak moss, the dark, mossy, deeply fixative ingredient that gave classic Chypres their soul, has been heavily restricted because of allergen concerns. Real birch tar, real civet, certain levels of certain musks, all rolled back. Houses had to reformulate, sometimes quietly, sometimes drastically. The bottle on the shelf today with the same name, the same packaging as the one your mother wore in 1978 is, in many cases, not the same liquid. It's a close approximation built within the new rules. And one of the reasons modern fragrances seem to evaporate faster than the classics is that some of the most powerful natural fixatives, the molecules that used to anchor a scent to your skin for 12 hours, simply aren't allowed in the same quantities anymore. That's not a conspiracy. That's documented regulatory history. But it's also why the petroleum jelly trick has become more relevant than ever. You're manually replacing the fixative power that got legislated out of the bottle. Now let's get into the cheap stuff that quietly punches above its weight, because this is where the department stores really lose sleep. Walk into any drugstore in America and you'll find bottles for under $20 that, on Fragrantica's user-voted longevity charts, score higher than designer releases costing 5 times as much. I'm not going to tell you they smell better than a $100 niche fragrance, because scent is personal and complex. But longevity, sillage, the raw mechanical performance of staying on your skin, the drugstore bottles often win, and fragrance reviewers on YouTube and X have been documenting this for years. Brands like Coty, Jovan, and certain old-school colognes that have been sitting on the bottom shelf since the 1980s were formulated before the heaviest IFRA restrictions and, in some cases, were grandfathered with formulas that still contain higher levels of the old workhorse molecules. Jovan Musk, for men and for women, original Coty offerings, certain Avon vintage holdovers that you can still find on eBay for pocket change. The fragrance community on Base Notes and the dupe-focused threads on r/fragrance clones treat these as open secrets. They're not glamorous, they don't come in heavy glass with gold caps. But sprayed over a barrier of petroleum jelly on prep skin, they will outlast bottles that cost $150 more. Let me knock down a couple of myths while we're here, because half the advice floating around online is garbage and it's costing you wear time. Myth number 1. Rubbing your wrist together after spraying breaks the fragrance and ruins the top notes. This one gets repeated constantly, and the chemistry doesn't really back it up. The friction generates a tiny amount of heat, which can accelerate evaporation of the most volatile top notes by a few seconds. But the idea that you're crushing molecules or destroying the scent is overstated. The real reason not to rub is that you're wiping product off your skin before it has a chance to settle. Don't rub, just let it dry, but don't lose sleep over it either. Myth number 2. More sprays equals more longevity. Up to a point, yes. Past that point, you're just creating a cloud that gives everyone in the elevator a headache and saturating your skin past what it can hold. 4 to 6 sprays on prepped pulse points will outperform 15 sprays on dry skin every time. Myth number 3. Storing your perfume in the bathroom is fine. It's not. Heat, humidity, and light degrade fragrance compounds. The bottle in your steamy bathroom is losing potency every time you shower. Keep it in a drawer, in the box, away from light and heat. That's not a trick. That's preservation, and it's free. Here's another layer the counter won't mention. Layering. Real layering, not the marketing version. If you take an unscented, oil-based moisturizer, apply it to your pulse points, let it sink in for about 30 seconds. Then spray your fragrance over it. You get a similar effect to the petroleum jelly trick, but with a lighter feel. Cocoa butter works, shea butter works, plain unscented body oil works. The principle is identical. Give the molecules something fatty to bind to, and they will not lift off your skin as fast. Some fragrance fans on Reddit go even further and use a matching scented body lotion underneath, which is why brands that sell the full line, the lotion plus the shower gel plus the perfume, are quietly counting on you to assume the lotion is just an upsell. It's not just an upsell. It's the fixative they're charging you separately for instead of putting it in the bottle. And here's the final piece, the thing that ties this whole story together. The reason your perfume vanishes by lunch isn't because you bought the wrong bottle, and it isn't because your skin is broken. It's because the entire retail fragrance experience is optimized around the assumption that you will not prep your skin. You will not use a barrier, you will not store the bottle properly, and you will come back to repurchase every 6 to 8 weeks. The $2 tub of petroleum jelly in your medicine cabinet quietly breaks that entire business model. A drugstore bottle that costs less than a movie ticket sprayed over a thin layer of that jelly on properly moisturized skin. Kept in a cool, dark drawer will outlast almost anything you can buy at the mall. That's not a hot take. That's what fragrance enthusiasts have been quietly doing for years, while the rest of us refilled the same $80 bottle 4 times a year. So here's what I want you to do tonight. Go to your bathroom. Find the cheapest, most forgotten fragrance you own, the one you almost threw out because it never lasted. Tomorrow morning, dab petroleum jelly on your wrists, behind your ears, on the side of your neck, the inside of your elbows. Let it sit for 10 seconds. Then spray that forgotten bottle, 4 sprays, no rubbing. Walk out the door, check your wrist at lunch, check it at 3, check it at 6, and then come back here and tell me in the comments what happened, because I read them. I'm building the next video around the bottles you all keep naming as the 1S that betrayed you the worst. There's one designer house in particular that keeps coming up, and what they quietly did to their flagship scent between the original launch. The current bottle on the shelf is something I think you deserve to know about. Subscribe so you don't miss it, because once you see what they changed, you'll never spend full price at that counter again. And before you click away, let me give you a few more things to think about, because the petroleum jelly trick is just the doorway. Once you understand why it works, you start seeing the whole fragrance industry differently. You start asking questions the counter staff cannot answer. Consider this. In 1986, the average Eau de Parfum on a department store shelf contains somewhere between 18% and 22% fragrance oil concentration. By 2019, independent lab tests commissioned by fragrance bloggers like Jeremy Fragrance, the team at Fragrantica found that many flagship designer scents had dropped to between 8% and 12%, sometimes lower. That is not a rumor, that is gas chromatography. The bottle looks the same, the price has tripled. The juice inside has been quietly diluted, sometimes by more than half, and reformulated to comply with IFRA restrictions that banned limited ingredients like oak moss, certain musks, and natural bergamot oils starting in the early 2000s. That is why your mother's bottle of Chanel No. 5 from 1,978, the one sitting in her vanity, smells richer, deeper, and lasts 6 hours longer than the bottle you bought last Christmas for $140. It is not nostalgia, it is chemistry. The 1,921 original formula by Ernest Beau contained ingredients that are simply illegal to use at the same concentration today. So when you layer petroleum jelly under a modern fragrance, you are essentially restoring the staying power that regulation and cost-cutting stripped away. You are giving a weakened formula a fighting chance. Here is the other thing nobody tells you. Heat kills fragrance. The bathroom, where 90% of people store their bottles, regularly swings between 68 and 94 degrees Fahrenheit during a hot shower. Each one of those swings degrades the top notes, oxidizes the citrus, and turns the heart of the fragrance flat within 18 months. A bottle stored in a bedroom drawer at a steady 65 degrees will smell true for 5 to 7 years. A bottle on the bathroom windowsill will be noticeably off by month 9. You are not imagining that your favorite scent smells different than it did last year. It does. And you have been storing it in the worst possible place in your home. The stakes here are not just financial, though over a decade, the average fragrance buyer wastes between $1,800 and $3,000 on reapplications and replacement bottles. The stakes are sensory. They are about the version of yourself you present to the world at 2 inches the afternoon, at a job interview, at a second date, at a parent-teacher conference. That trail you leave behind you, the one people remember after you have left the room, that is worth protecting, and it costs $2 to fix,